Dear friends from all across Africa, welcome to a new episode of Doing Business in Africa. Today, I'm speaking to Waleed Gamal El Din, Chairman of Export Council for Building Materials and Metallic Industries in Egypt. This council is appointed by Her Excellency the Minister of Foreign Trade and Industries. And we're very happy and we're very pleased to come to speak not only to the business community, but to the ones who are really in charge of shaping the strategy, shaping agreements, and pushing to make whatever challenges to be addressed, to be fulfilled. So here is a new episode and a new interview with an expert in the construction industry and a big focus on the building material. Waleed, very warm welcome to the show, and thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you very much for inviting me, and it's a pleasure to be with you on the program today.
Well, in doing business in Africa, usually what we are trying to do is to bring the business community within Africa closer. We want to come together closer as one big giant family. So we try to build the pipeline between businesses. We try to create opportunities. We try to address whatever challenges that may hinder the cooperation between African nations and between the African people. So construction is a critical industry. It's a pivotal business and it drives lots of other industries. I think it's close to 90 other sector. So that's why construction always takes a priority for us, and we try to address the construction sector from different angles. And thanks to your presence with us today, we will try to focus on a major component of the construction sector, which is the building materials. But as we start the show, every time, Waleed, we ask our guests to walk us through their journey and introduce their profile. So would you please share your journey with all the listeners of CBR today?
Sure. My name is Waleed Gamal El Din. I work in the field of waterproofing membranes, manufacturing, and waterproofing materials, which are used to protect the building structure from water, whether it's underground or on the roof or in the wet areas inside the building. And also I work in the field of manufacturing of insulation materials to make sure the building is protected from the heat of the sun. And of course, in Africa, we have generally warm weather. So insulation is very important to save energy and to provide the dwellers of the building with a comfortable environment. This is my technical background. However, in terms of the council, I have been the chairman of the Export Council for Building Materials and Metallic Industries for nearly 10 years. I was appointed by the Minister of Trade and Industry in Egypt. And the job of the council has a board of 9 members. They are all exporters of various types of building materials and metallic industries from Egypt. Mainly, we are tasked with representing the industry worldwide and also with the government of Egypt. So we represent the interests of the exporting community in building materials and metallic industries. And we discuss with the government how to make the export business more competitive and also easier, to remove any obstacles that we have, whether they're legal obstacles or logistical obstacles or maybe tax or any kind of government red tape. So we help the government in pointing out how to promote exports and to remove the obstacles from the way. We also have another task, which is to promote exports of Egyptian materials. So we travel, of course, pre-COVID, we were very active in traveling to maybe 30 or 40 trade fairs worldwide every year, Of course, for the last year and a half, we have not had any activity in terms of travel because of the COVID restrictions. But once the improvement happens in the COVID situation, we will again be resuming that activity. We also have another activity where we invite buyers, African buyers or buyers from any country, to visit Egypt, and we organize tours for them to the factories where they can go and see the production process and see the quality control procedures and meet with the owners and the managers of the factories to make sure that they get confidence in the Egyptian products. Because in Egypt, we have a very strong manufacturing base in terms of building materials and metallic industries. And we like to show all our visitors what we have, because we're very proud of the levels that we have achieved in terms of quality, in terms of advancements in production methods, and also in terms of competitiveness in pricing. So this is in brief what we do as a council.
First of all, wow, I'm so impressed for more than one reason. Because I love the direction now that those in charge of formulating policies and shaping strategies and the voice of a sector are now coming from the business community itself. So you are speaking about the building material sector, and you are an expert in this domain. So which means that you're very much relevant to whatever challenge. It's not theoretical, it's not political for sure. So these are things that will be, whatever issues highlighted, it will be coming from real situation, and it will be very much effective because it will come to address an immediate challenge. The second reason why I'm so impressed, because some people might think, actually lots of people might think that the building materials are not exportable, and it is kind of produced and manufactured for local consumption. So now you're telling us that no, the building materials, including the metallic products, so it's a heavy product that most of the people used to believe it's not exportable.
Yes, that's correct. Many people have the concept that building materials, because of their bulk, they're quite heavy and large in size, and the value compared to the size is fairly low, that they're not exportable. However, with the strategic location of Egypt, as well as the good cost structure that we have here in Egypt, we are able to overcome some of these obstacles by being able to produce products which are competitively priced. So we are able to transport them after we manufacture, arrive at the end user's location at a fairly reasonable price.
I think, and I will come later to this, but I cannot resist asking you this question. I think in terms of the quality of the natural resources in Egypt, I know that it's a story of supply and demand, and when there are oversupplied markets, so markets tend to export to other countries. But I know that Egypt stands out in the quality of some of the natural resources, limestone, for example, correct?
Correct, yes. Egypt is we are lucky that we have huge deposits of limestones in Egypt, and also they are very pure. Exactly. So the materials come out very clean, very pure. So the end product comes out at a very high quality and a fairly good price.
Perfect. Fantastic. So now let's have a big picture on the construction sector as a whole, and the potential of the construction, because this is construction. Of course, we include infrastructure under the umbrella of the construction domain. So construction sector in our countries is heavily contributing to the national economy economy and to GDP.
Yes.
But why construction in this part of the world, in our African countries, really have this heavy and significant contribution and strategic importance to the national economy of each and every African country?
It's because countries, when they're still in an emerging, they're in a stage where they are still emerging economies, the first thing you need to build is your infrastructure, because infrastructure enables everything else and any other economic activity to happen. So generally, the investment in infrastructure is the earliest investment you start with, and based on it, you build other things. So for example, you need to have industry, heavy manufacturing industry. You need to build roads to reach that industry. You need to build electrical power plants to be able to supply electrical power to the factories. And you need to provide all other utilities like gas pipelines, natural gas, or water pipelines, and so on. So the infrastructure is the basis on which you build, or it's the foundation of any other economic activity.
I think as well, in addition to this, we have a very specific, favorable criteria for Africa, where we enjoy the availability of the needed materials and resources. We have also the manpower, the availability of the manpower. So it's definitely, it's not as expensive, as a heavy pressure on the budget as it can be in other markets. We have also the kind strategic direction of most of the African nation to commit to the development of each and every country. So and policies are there to support this. But I need to know, within the African countries, the continent, how we are set to benefit from the resources and muscles available across the continent. So here we are talking about treaties, we're talking about commercial agreements and ties between the African countries.
Yes, Africa is blessed in that it's a very young continent in terms of the average age. We have a young population in Africa. I think it's the youngest average age among any continent.
Very true.
So that is an advantage in that we have a big work force available. So the availability of this workforce makes it easier to start industry. However, what we still lack is integration between the different countries. We have many countries which have a strong manufacturing base in Africa, but not enough integration between them. We are all almost like isolated islands, even though we are on one continent together.
And despite the efforts to build the bridges between
Yes.
countries and between the nations, but we're still somehow not very well integrated.
That is correct. And I think one of the efforts, some of the efforts, of course, are the trade agreements, as you mentioned, that we have the COMESA agreement of the eastern and southern part of Africa. We have the ECOWAS on the west, and also we have in the south. So there's an effort to integrate the three major trade blocs, and there were some conferences held. I think it was announced in Sharm el-Sheikh about 3 years ago. It was presided upon meeting, or the conference was presided upon by His Excellency President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. And there were many African leaders in attendance when that agreement was signed. So hopefully this will come into effect soon. But then the infrastructure of trade is still not quite strong. We have been hearing a lot about the road that will connect Alexandria, the port of Alexandria in northern Egypt, to Cape Town. Yeah. To have one road connecting from the north of the continent to the south of the continent. There are many sections that were built in the road, but as of today, we cannot say that it's completed. Once this road is completed, and also there is another road, the international coastal road between Egypt to Morocco. I think most of it is completed, so there is possibility of using trucks to go east to west in northern part of Africa. But from north to south, it's still difficult. and from the north to the west, still difficult. So we have to use ocean freight, which is really more difficult than, let's say, European countries. European countries, most of them can ship to each other by road very easily.
Yeah.
The product goes from the factory in any European country to the other side, to the buyer in the Europe within 1, 2, or 3 days. It's there by road, and the cost is a lot lower, even though everything costs more in Europe. But because the road network is so well connected and so easy, it turns out to be cheaper at the end. In Africa, we cannot ship by road very far, and even within some African countries, shipping to the country is one thing, and shipping within the country is
another story.
Yes, another story. So that, I think, I wish that the African governments would pay more attention to improving the road connections, international roads between them, and also domestic roads within each country. That would really help lift the status of trade between inter-African trade or intra-African trade, and also improve people's lives everywhere, because they can reach the products and supplies that they need, can reach them to every village, to every town in Africa, and to reach at a reasonable cost, and will not arrive spoiled or broken or whatever. And that is one of the major obstacles of doing business in Africa or trading internationally within Africa.
As you rightly mentioned, there is a huge potential and great opportunities available within Africa. So when we look at the pipeline since 2018, so the project value that we had across the African countries, I think it totaled up to 149 billion US dollar. So that's mega pipeline. So
Yes.
and the smallest project within this pipeline starts from 50 million US dollar. So what's at stake is really high. I think that's very promising. So how, like if we're talking now about the export council for building materials,
Yes.
what are the efforts? Are you exchanging with your counterparts within other African nations to address those issues? We have the financing arms, we have the technical capacities, we have the policies. So what's stopping us?
It's a fairly complicated issue, to be honest with you. But we are in constant contact with the Egyptian government. The government actually consults with the council continuously about how to better improve the situation with Africa and the trade. And we give some ideas. For example, one of the major obstacles that we had is, two of the major obstacles were the lack of availability of direct shipping lines to West Africa, especially from Egypt.
Yeah.
Because when we ship to West Africa, we have to load it on the ships, and the ships go to Europe and unload, and then the product or the containers stay in the European port for weeks, and then they're loaded again on another ship that takes them to West Africa. Mm-hmm. As a result, it takes maybe 4 or 5 weeks for a shipment to arrive, when if it went directly, it could be 15 days. And also we pay almost double the normal price because there are 2 ships involved. So we discussed this with the government, and the government started already a subsidized shipping line to East Africa through the Ministry of Public Enterprise. And now we had many discussions with ship owners, with the big shipping lines, and we requested that they do direct shipping lines. The problem is usually volume. The shipping lines is almost like a chicken and egg situation.
Oh, yeah.
The shipping lines, they say, you don't have enough volume to justify that we send a ship directly to West Africa. So give us the volume and we will dedicate some ships.
We'll avail the ships.
Yeah, and we tell them, okay, reduce the price so we can give you the volume. And they say, well, we can't reduce the price until we have the volume first. So someone needs to intervene to break that negotiating deadlock.
Okay. So
the government, the Minister of Foreign Trade recently announced that in the new export promotion budget for starting July in 2021, the upcoming budget in 5 weeks almost, they will create a subsidy for shipping to Africa that will be up to 80% of the cost. So that way, if we are as shippers or as exporters getting 80% reduction in the cost of shipping, of course, we can ship much better and we can be much more competitive. And that will create the volume. And we hope that eventually the shipping lines, once they see large volumes leaving Egypt, then they will start to create direct shipping lines. So that's one solution that we hope that will be implemented soon.
We all wish for this to happen because it's soon, and I think the impact would be great. Let me ask you first about the competition within the building materials market in Africa. We of course we know some countries are big players, giant. The markets are massive and they have a massive supply. Here the competition would be a bit unfair because the pricing would be they export on the variable costs, so they come, I'm sure, much affordable than other quality products from across the African countries.
Correct. This is a problem that we face, and it's a major problem for us. First, I'll talk about the exporting companies who send finished goods, and then I'll talk about the construction companies, contractors. They have a major subsidy given to them by the government in the cost of the material themselves. So as you mentioned correctly, they sell at variable cost, and then the profit margin is given to them by their government to make the business
to compensate, to compensate
the fact that they reduce their prices, which we cannot, the Egyptian government cannot give the same level of support because it's a huge number. They dedicate huge billions and billions of dollars every year to subsidize the exports. So it is a difficult market for us, really. The second issue is that the construction companies, when they go in and have a project, usually, first of all, the project is usually not in an open bid. It is agreed upon politically. So the leaders of the countries talk to each other and the project is given directly to the Turkish or the Chinese company. Egypt does not have this advantage. We have discussed with His Excellency the Prime Minister several times that we would like also the political, I think Egypt has excellent political relations with all African countries. We would like that whenever there is a visit by His Excellency the President or His Excellency the Prime Minister, that we put specifically in the agenda of the meeting between the leaders the possibility of offering Egyptian companies an opportunity to participate in the development of projects in Africa. We have done some projects like that, but not sufficient if we compare the amount of projects that Egypt gets versus China or Turkey. We are far behind. So this is one issue that we would like to do more. And we know that the Egyptian companies, construction companies, are very strong and very capable. Visitors who come to Egypt, we take them to the new capital, we take them to Al Alamein and other parts of Egypt, and they are amazed by the quality and the speed and the scale of the projects. They're huge projects.
10%, I think, of the pipeline of Africa for the new mega projects till 2024, 10% comes from Egypt.
Yes. And the speed of the projects, I think projects were done very, very fast. The Egyptian capital, the new administrative capital, came in no time. From desert to an almost habitable city in a matter of a few years and at the highest level. So we do have the people and the skills and the financial ability to go to Africa and do excellent work. We have a great example in Tanzania.
That was a heartwarming, really,
Yes.
project. Yeah, we all felt the pride, and we all felt that we want to congratulate our friends in Tanzania for this mega achievement that soon will be celebrated and operated.
Yes, it's a great project, and it's a joint venture between two Egyptian companies, the Arab Contractors and its Swedish group. And the progress, I hear, is going very, very well, on schedule, and the quality is really good, and it's an excellent example. And this dam and the power plant are going to add a lot to the economy of Tanzania. So I think it's a win-win situation for both Egypt and Tanzania.
I was just wondering, it's correct that we had the Egyptian Minister of Housing and Infrastructure was visiting the project this week,
Yes.
I think, right?
Yes, and before that, I believe the Prime Minister also visited, but in the very early stages. So the project has a very high level of support in terms of
state,
the
state
government.
commitment.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, there is a major commitment from the state, and they're giving a lot of support. So that is very helpful. And I hope that this great example, a big success story, could be replicated across Africa. So I hope that we can do this over and over again in many other countries.
Okay, if I am an organization or a country that's ready to launch a new project, and I have a provider, not necessarily from my African cousins and brothers and sisters, but he's coming at a less budget, a more economic options. Why I should consider Algerian or Moroccan or Egyptian or South African provider, since they don't compete on the price?
I think that they can compete on the price. If you compare, let's say, some major projects are done by European companies. You have Italian companies and French construction companies working in Africa. I'm sure that the Egyptians, I don't know about other countries, but I'm sure Egyptian contractors can compete on price. And also one advantage that Egyptians do when they go in a country and get a job, a construction job, they use many local resources. So they buy, not all the products come from Egypt, a big percentage is bought locally, so they help the local economy. At the same time, they employ
so they avail jobs, you mean, in the local market?
Yes, that's true.
And by nature, the construction industry, they use lots
labor
of
intensive.
Yes. They use lots of manpower in the project.
Correct.
How about training, know-how? Definitely, we all need to continue to build capacities. How we cooperate among the African nations, the African countries, to elevate the level of expertise and knowledge within our countries, so that we come as competitive, as a really valid option when we are considering a partner or provider to the project?
I think in Egypt, when we go somewhere, go to another country and do the work, we don't keep the know-how or the training only within our team. It is, given, or, there's a lot of training that's offered to our partners from the country where we are working, and there's major know-how transfer. So if you look at roads projects, many of the Egyptian companies have done a lot of road projects in Africa, so in Libya, in Chad, in Ghana, and many other countries. Usually local engineers and local workers learn, and they become more or less self-sufficient eventually. That's a big difference than, say, working with European companies. They come and they keep the know-how to themselves, so they can create a dependency. They want to have the African country always be dependent on the Europeans, which is something we as Africans do not wish to live under being always dependent on external parties for our own development.
That's very promising, really.
Yes.
Now I want to ask about the impact of the COVID.
Yes.
So the COVID came to impact and to slow down every economy and to impact every sector. Yet we're now sharing a pipeline that's, I think it's one of the biggest in the history of our countries, and it's one of the highest when compared to the global scene. So how COVID came to impact the market?
COVID, of course, was something, an unprecedented event, at least in our lifetime. For over more than 100 years, we haven't seen anything like it. And we were not prepared for it. It was something that occurred very suddenly. And I don't remember any event in my whole lifetime of seeing every sector affected. We have had many events, such as natural disasters or terrorism or whatever, which impacted one country or a few countries or maybe a few sectors. But never an event that affects every country and every sector. This was a real, like they say, perfect storm. Everything can go wrong at the same time.
At the same time for everyone.
For everyone. So it was very strange and it was very scary, at least in the beginning. First few months, we didn't know what to do. So in terms of, should we open factories or close them? Should we have the workers quarantined or should they go home? All these things we learned as we practiced them. We had guidance from WHO and from the Egyptian government, and many other governments were guiding their citizens. And the guidance kept changing because the situation was evolving. We initially all thought that 2 weeks of isolation for everyone should be sufficient, and everybody, all countries shut down for the first 2 or 3 weeks, thinking that when we go back to work after 2 or 3
things
weeks,
will go back to normal.
Things will go back to normal. Now, a year and a half later, we're still don't know. We're still not sure when it will end.
Yes.
So unfortunately, it's an unprecedented event, but we have tried to cope as much as we could. But of course, many things went wrong. For example, logistics. Logistics now are very difficult because China is the major, let's say, the shipping lines. The majority of the containers flow through China or come from China. So the supply chain was interrupted when the COVID started.
Big times. But I think the entire business network globally, we have learned something, that you can never put all the eggs in one basket.
Exactly. And this is one issue that we have discussed with the government of Egypt as an export council. We are now starting to promote a new concept, which we could not promote before, because whenever we told importers in different countries that you have to have an alternative to China, you cannot just depend on China. And they said, why? The prices are good, the products always come, there's supply, abundance of supply, they have big capacity. Why should I even look for another supplier? Now, I think everyone learned the lesson that even if you wish to use China as your primary supplier, at least have a secondary supplier. Let's say maybe instead of 100%, keep it 70% with China, 30% with others. So if anything happens, you can always have another supplier that can help you out. And I think this will work to the benefit of Egypt.
Exactly. How do you see African countries should benefit from this wake-up call? It's a wake-up call. And let's say now every nation has the right to show how they can contribute and where they stand out. So how we as African countries should respond to this, how we should seize this opportunity so that the world has learned a lesson, really. Diversification is needed.
Yes, that we learned the lesson also to shorten the supply chain. Instead of having supply chain extending all the way from China or the Far East in general to Africa, maybe we should have the supply chain be from Africa to Africa. That way, you can quickly move things, move products across countries instead of waiting long term and waiting for products to move. But that means we have to create some more industrial capacities within Africa to be able to be self-sufficient. So we have to look carefully at the products or raw materials that we are dependent upon that only come from China, and try to work together in creating an African source for these raw materials or finished products in order not to be 100% dependent on the supply from China.
That would be amazing, because
Yes.
this is how we're going to really evolve, and this is how we're going to go beyond our borders and our markets.
Correct.
You told us in the beginning that before of the COVID-19, you and the other members of the board, you were very active in visiting other markets, speaking to other potential partners, introducing the capacities and the expertise of the Egyptian building materials market. And then came the lockdown and everything was kind of put on hold. But I'm sure
Correct.
that you have figured out other options to continue to deliver the mission and to continue to promote the sector and the unique advantages that are available within the Egyptian market. So how you manage to overcome this kind of physical isolation, and
Yes.
how the industry then shifted to adopt technology, and we were not very much active or known to be a tech-driven business.
Yes. I think we had to very quickly change the methods that we use in doing business, from being face-to-face and traveling and inviting guests to come to Egypt to, for example, we started to learn to do business more online. So I think the COVID-19 has accelerated a lot e-commerce, selling through e-commerce sites, and also meetings through programs like Zoom or Microsoft Teams, or all these programs have become commonplace. We meet regularly with our clients using these softwares now, where in the past it was either by phone, email, or meetings. Now it's mostly video conferencing and other types of online meetings. And sometimes we have business-to-business meetings, like different B2B connections between buyer and seller through the use of a Zoom platform. So these are ways that we try to compensate for the loss of the ability to travel by doing these types of meetings.
You talked about a kind of e-commerce. Do you think there would be an e-commerce opportunities for building materials?
It's not the same. Of course, it's not yet developed to be able to replace the traditional methods, but at least it keeps the business going. In many cases, there is a need to see the factories, to test the quality in person, and to touch the product. So it can never be a full replacement, but it has helped a little bit to compensate.
If the sector is to further work on its development, where should be the development area? R&D, for example, where we need to further invest and focus in order to be globally competitive?
I think R&D and innovation are very important. Also, customization of products to the local needs. So we can't just have the same product selling everywhere in the world. Every country might have different requirements or different weather. We provide products for building. So building is affected by the environment. You could have countries which are very hot. The sun, we have a very strong sun in most African countries, so ultraviolet rays are quite strong. So you need a product that can be in the sun for extended periods and extended heat and not be affected. So we need to work on African specifications for product rather than simply follow existing European or American specification and providing the same to Africa.
Yeah, so creating our own standards and
Yes.
code. Okay, so if we're talking about the integration between African countries and like promoting intra-African trade, so what are the materials that Egypt needs to source from other countries, and it can be provided from Africa and vice versa, of course? So in order to really work on making this happen, the intra-African integration.
Okay, in terms of Egypt, I think Africa is very rich in mineral resources. So there are many mines in Africa which produce raw materials for industry, such as bauxite, for example, which goes into aluminum industry. There are iron ore, coal, all these raw materials, which Egypt perhaps sometimes imports from different countries, whether it's the Far East or Europe. So if the mining sector in Africa can be linked to Egyptian industries, perhaps it could be a good source for raw material. Egypt also imports a large amount of wood. Because we are a desert country, we don't have many trees in Egypt or many forests. So forestry products such as wood are regularly imported mainly from West Africa. So these are products which we could see a lot more development in terms of Egypt importing from African countries.
That's amazing. So
Yes.
so great opportunities are there for
Yes,
all of us,
definitely.
for all the African countries, and definitely we can build on each other, we can complement on each other, and at the end of the day, the winner, the beneficiary, is the African citizen, is me and you.
Exactly.
and our kids and the future generation.
Exactly.
So I think this
Yes.
should be the way forward.
Yes, definitely.
That's amazing. I can't thank you enough, and really I enjoyed this talk, and I enjoyed getting to know more about where is the potential of Africa when it comes to building material. But please allow me, Waleed, before we conclude,
Sure.
just to ask you, so it's almost the middle, we are in the middle of 2021. What
Yes.
are your priorities this year?
Our priorities are to hopefully, when there are improvements in the COVID situation because of increased vaccination efforts in many countries, we hope to start again to travel to trade fairs. So we have plans to go to trade fairs in Africa, especially Kenya and Nigeria this year are on the radar for us. We are now arranging for many companies who are members. We have, I didn't mention maybe that we have 450 members in our council, and we are working on behalf of many of them to open up opportunities to go to trade fairs in Africa. So hopefully the second half of the year, perhaps starting in September, we will be going to several trade fairs in African countries, and we hope it will become possible by that time.
That's a dream for all of us. But let me ask you one question. Is
Sure.
there a council for the building materials for the African countries? Is there an organization, entity that is working on making this coordination and integration between each and every country to make this happen?
Not really. In terms of producing materials, there isn't a Pan-African Council, but there is an African Federation of Contractors, which is a very well-organized association.
It's very active as well. Yeah.
Yes, it's very active and it's very successful. So the contractors of African countries, they meet regularly and they have a lot of coordination, a lot of joint activities. But the producers, we are not as organized as the contractors.
I hope one day we can celebrate with you the announcement and the formation of the first council for African producers of building materials.
I hope so.
we're very fortunate in Africa to have great resources, and we need to build on each other to benefit from the experience and the know-how available within each country, within each sector. So we have, and that's great news to conclude with, that opportunities are there, are promising, are massive, and it's up to us, it's up to African people to make this a reality and to take it to the next level.
Yes, I hope so too. I look forward to that.
I hope in September we can get some updates and we can have a quick call with you while you are in Lagos or maybe in Nairobi, and just give us a quick update from a successful business visit. Waleed, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It was an interview that's full of hopes, full of information. Inshallah, I'm sure that we have what it takes to make this happen. And let's celebrate the resources, let's celebrate the expertise, let's celebrate the policies that are aiming to build better integration between the African countries. Thank you so much, Waleed. I hope we can meet again, and I hope we can get positive updates from you on the scene of the building materials within Africa.
Thank you very much, and I look forward to that very much. Thank you, and I appreciate you hosting me today.
Thank you so much. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have just enjoyed an interview with one of the builders of Africa. He is a passionate African. He is committed, like all of us in the business domain. We are committed to take our businesses to the next level. I hope you have enjoyed this episode, and I hope we can have a follow-up session soon to see that we are together with the strategy makers, that we have managed to address the challenges we're having within our countries. That was our episode from Cairo Business Radio. See you next week, and a new sector and a new passionate African. Thank you so much. This was Samar Raouf. See you next week.